Hey everyone, and welcome to another live Liverpool Transfer Talk Show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzie, and I'm your host for this evening. Now, the topic of discussion for today is something that's definitely surprised me last night as the news broke on social media, and that is that Atletico Madrid are very much interested in signing our left back. That is Andrew Robertson. So today we'll discuss the player in terms of what he brings to the table. Is he going to be a good fit for the opposition? But also from a Liverpool point of view, what do we do if the player does end up leaving the club? Because it's not something that we had, you know, in thought in our heads that could happen. Well, not from a fan point of view anyway. So we'll dive into different, aspects of this breaking news that hit yesterday, but also we've got some further updates today as well. So the rumor, in terms of to say out loud, is that Atletico Madrid are willing to pay £7 million for Andrew Robertson, but the club value him at 15 million. So for me, this would be a bit of a risky move to sell Robertson with anticipation of Kirkers coming into the club as well. I think the logical approach would have been to keep Robertson for the remainder of this next season because it's his last year of his contract. That way, you have an experienced left back in your squad. So if Kirkes, if things don't happen straight away, you've got the experience of Robertson that can come in and fill in at certain games, but then it also gives Kirkes the time to develop and solidify his position in the team. And also the question is, because this isn't something that I feel like the club would have anticipated at this stage. And so is it easy to go and just sign another left back? And the reason why I say another left back is because Kirkes pretty much is, virtually a done deal now. So when you've got a new signing coming in, it's very hard to sign another player of the same position to basically be the backup because that's literally what that person is going to be. If we were to sign, like a Nuno Mendes, he'd be ahead of Kirkes in the pecking order, but we're not going to go and sign an elite left back that's going to surplus, not sure I said surpass Kirkes in the line. So Kirkes will be listed down as the main left back at the club. So in terms of different profiles, one profile that I think would be a great addition to a squad, and he has been linked with the club for a number of months, is Joro Hato, who's the Ajax defender. He can of course play left back and centre back, but from what I've gathered, it looks like he has decided to stay at Ajax. So doesn't look like he'll be making a move to any club this summer. Other options that could be considered for Robertson in the squad is an experienced option from the Premier League, which is Robinson, from Fulham, who pretty much had a decent season for Fulham. I think he recorded about 10 assists. And he's a player that, probably if he was a few years younger, then we would probably gone for him ahead of Kirkes. But I think he's 27, 28. So he would be a good experienced option to have. And he's not a player that just because his experience doesn't mean he's not adequate quality for that left back position. I think he'd provide a solid option on that side. He's good defensively, but attacking wise, he's still a good runner. He can whip in crosses and he's got good passing range. So I think he would be a smart signing to replace Robertson. Whether or not he would want to make that move and know that he's fighting for place rather than being a guaranteed starter, is another debate. Another option where it's pretty much an internal promotion for someone, I guess, is Owen Beck. Now, the fullback has had a good season, or should I say, last two seasons, he's had good spells at Dundee United, and then also last season for Blackburn Rovers. So maybe this could be a season where he comes in and challenges for that left back position. With him in the squad, he's not going to demand for signs, but he knows he needs to fight his way and try and stake a claim into the first team. It's a similar situation to Conor Bradley where he went out on loan, had a fantastic spell at his club, which was Bolton at the time, and came back and was, he knew he wasn't going to be a starter, but he knew that if he worked hard and really focused in applying himself, he could definitely challenge for a spot in the team and can also play, in rotation, or he can cover for the player that is ahead of him in the pecking order. So Owen Beck could be the option. He's been very highly regarded at the club. I thought maybe this season would be the time to loan him out one more time, and then when Robertson's contract finishes next season, then he will get that promotion, or he will come into the fold. So that would have been my thinking, but maybe we fast track that and bring in Owen Beck, and we don't need to actually sign another player, which of course, will save us money. I guess in the long term as well, it could probably help us with the homegrown quota, which actually would happen now because he's 22 years of age, and he would qualify as a homegrown player. So that would be a smart decision from the club. Whether he is adequate quality for Liverpool in terms of playing in the Premier League and playing in the Champions League, that's something the coaches will need to decide. But if we were to sign another centre back, for example, that can play left back, it gives you that security that if Owen Beck isn't, you know, good enough to play for the first team, then you can always get that centre back to utilize and play in a left back position, and then he ends up being third choice. If that is the situation. So Owen Beck being promoted to, the first team squad isn't a crazy shot. It could be considered, I guess, from Liverpool. And if Liverpool want to go for another option elsewhere, where you try and sign a young and up and coming fullback that's playing in a league that is not as competitive as the Premier League, but would be you know overjoyed about joining a Premier League team and challenging for a role within the squad. We could go for someone like El Haj Malik Diouf, who had a fantastic performance for Senegal against England not so long ago. He's a player I've been linked with. I think we're linked with him early on this year. He's a player that plays at left back for Red Star Belgrade, so he's a player that could be a fantastic option for us. Um, or there's one thing that we might be missing here, and you know, it's maybe gone above our heads, but we've got to, paint the picture now as well. What about Simicast? He's a player that I think we all assume is going to leave because Kirk is about to join. So we're thinking, like for like replacement. But what if that wasn't the angle from the Liverpool coaches? What if they always thought that Andrew Robertson might not be the right quality for us going forward, and we have to maybe sell him instead of Simicast, because I think that was the ongoing debate amongst us Liverpool fans over the course of last season. Who would you keep? Would you keep Robertson, or would you keep Simicast? Because Robertson showed different spells that he's not the same type of player in terms of from an attacking point of view, but even from a defensive point of view, his awareness isn't quite there. So maybe the coaching staff have, ditched that idea of having an experienced player like Robertson, and, actually reviewed his overall performances this season and analyzed that, maybe he's not the player that we should have in the squad. Or, maybe I'm jumping the gun here because I don't think the club want to sell Robertson, but I think because this proposal has been presented to us, we are considering our options now. And no solid interest in Simicast either. So maybe it's actually worth keeping Simicast now, and rather than spending money, on different players that we weren't really planning on doing so, that might be the more sensible decision to do. Um, and look, in terms of on paper, if Robertson does leave and Simicast ends up staying at the club, I don't think it's the worst idea. Stylistically, Kirkers and Simicast do play, in similar form. Both attacking fullbacks, both have great crossing ability, great on the overlap, and can whip in crosses from set pieces as well. So it would be a good option to have Simicast as the backup left back, because I think he'll provide that experience that we were probably after in terms of Robertson. He doesn't offer the same leadership qualities as Robertson in terms of his personality and authority. But for Kirkes, at least, there is a player that is more experienced that can, mentor him, I guess, to an extent. But also from a Liverpool footballing point of view, if Kirkes hasn't hit the ground running, Simicast can put in a good shift for us as well. So I don't think it's the craziest of situations, but it's very intriguing to see what happens because it's kind of just come out of the blue. And according to rumors, Robertson is very, very keen on the move to Atletico, which confuses me a little bit. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of it. Atletico are a decent team. I know they lost 4-0 today, but I didn't realize that that would be a team that would sway the Scottish internationals' desire to leave Liverpool and join the Spanish team. And then I found out something that I wasn't aware of until today. Does everyone know who Robertson's agent is? Guess it's none other than Trent Alexander-Arnold's brother, Tyler. So it kind of all makes sense now. And I'm going to say outright, excuse my French, but this guy seems like a real piece of shit doing this agent role with no moral whatsoever, and simply using Liverpool to make a living. And I think with all this noise, I think that Robertson will end up leaving Liverpool and he'll end up being reunited with his former teammate in Trent. Of course, not the same club, but obviously in the same city. Now, the funny thing is that some rival fans are finding this story very interesting because they're presenting the question to Liverpool fans: will we have the same energy for Robertson like we showed for Trent Alexander-Arnold? Well, if Robertson starts speaking fluent French or Spanish, I should say, in the press conference, then yeah, we might have a bit of a problem there. But even so, the situation with Trent was a little bit different. He's engineered this exit for the last 2 or so years. Whereas Robertson, a bid has been presented, or it looks like, we have got the approach for the player. And, if the two clubs, agree on the fee, um, that deal will get concluded. So also, maybe with this, discussions with Atletico right now, maybe it opens a further discussion or further negotiations in regards to other players because we're on the table right now with Atletico. So maybe we can discuss another striker in Darwin Núñez, who has, shown interest, has, been presented to Atletico and they have shown interest in the player before. So that might be another deal that we can explore. But we can also discuss another striker that could, come the other way, and that is Julian Alvarez. So look, it's going to be very, very interesting in terms of what happens between the two clubs because there's a lot of names that have been linking uh, with each other. So you've got Robertson, Nunes going to Atletico, and Julian Alvarez possibly, joining Liverpool, which seems like a far-fetched dream. But crazy things have happened, so you just never, never know, I guess. But it's going to be very, very interesting in terms of how this transfer rumor unfolds because if there's any truth to it, Liverpool will probably have to add another list to the incomings because maybe we were only planning on signing 5 or 6 players. We've got to probably add another one to make it 7. So there's a bit of work to do in order to make sure we have a complete squad going into next season. So yeah, let's see what happens there. Um, Before we close the show, I'm just going to go through some of the comments. Um, Kieran says, "Good evening. What's your thoughts on the PSG Atletico game and the Club World Cup as a whole?" So I did a watch along for that game. It's actually the first game that I've watched as part of the Club World Cup. I'll be honest, it gave me preseason vibes, even though preseason hasn't officially started, but it wasn't played to real intensity or anything to that nature. So I'm not too sure. It just feels like a glorified preseason tournament, in my eyes. But I could be stand corrected because it's literally just started. There are a number of games that need to be played. So I will be doing watch-alongs for selected games. So be on the lookout for that. And then yeah, feel free to jump to get involved. Kieran says yes. Trent brother, yep, that's his agent. Which yeah, I didn't know until today, which is absolutely crazy. Kieran says, yes, Robertson leaving would be different because it's something that has come out of nowhere, unlike Trent's situation. Exactly that. Um, and Kieran says it seems like Trent was waiting for that move for time. Yeah, he definitely was. The way he speaks Spanish, he's been learning it for a while. Let's be brutally honest. And I don't think it's a surprise that he's been engineering the move for the last couple of years because now we can look back at it, like you can tell in terms of his body language, he wasn't quite there. And the funny thing that I found about this whole situation is that Darwin Núñez and Luis Diaz probably struggled with their English to communicate with players, but little did we know Trent understood every word that they were saying to each other in Spanish. So, and he's probably didn't even help out in terms of helping them around the squad. So yeah, shady behavior from Trent. I don't think anyone can really say anything positive about him now. Even it's just the way he carries himself. In the press conference, of course, speaking Spanish, but then saying that he's been waiting a long time for his move. Then he's like backtracking that comment by saying, "Oh no, when I say long time, I mean 2 weeks ago because that's when the deal was agreed between the two clubs." No, you meant what you said. You just, unfortunately for yourself, just blurted it out loud without actually thinking. So look, it is what it is. I thought the Trent thing would have been dead by now, but his brothers come to, get rid of another player in our squad and try and, gain as much pound signs in terms of his back pocket because that's what he's there for. He's there to earn a big check paycheck out of Liverpool right now by trying to get his client in Robertson a move to La Liga. But yeah, it is what it is. But I'm a bit disappointed that that's his agent. And that for me just shows that it could be something that happens quite soon. Especially if the rumor is that Robertson is keen on moving. Maybe Robertson didn't feel the love and respect from Liverpool fans in this past season because we have been quite vocal in terms of his performances being below par. Like I've been very sort of constructive in my criticism. I've never really said anything, to be, personal to any other player or anything to that nature. But of course, on social media, I don't represent everyone, but in social media, you probably get people that go above and beyond in an unnecessary fashion and speak about a player and personal life and all that sort of stuff. So maybe he just didn't feel that respect from the Liverpool fans, and maybe thinking, you know what, this offer's come. He's at the latter stage of his career. Maybe a move abroad to a Spanish team could be something off the bucket list for him as well. So if that is it, fair play. If he wants to move on, I wouldn't have any sort of like qualms of him leaving. It's just that I hope Liverpool respond in a correct manner, try and find the adequate replacement and try and strengthen the squad even further because a left back wasn't really on the cards after Kirkes, but we'll have to get another one, I guess. And we will need to sign a centre back most definitely. If it has to be a hybrid that can play centre back and left back, that's fine, so be it. But I don't want it to be where Joe Gomez ends up being the backup left back for Kirkes because that for me is not the right choice because quality wise, Gomez can do the job there, but his reliability hasn't been there in terms of his availability, I guess. So no, I hope Liverpool do sign a like for like replacement and not just assume that a squad player will cover the grounds when required. We need to be a bit more smarter than that. So I'm hoping that that is the case. And Kieran says, "Yeah, I agree. Not just the intensity of the game, but also the atmosphere in the stadium was lacking. Yeah, it just, I don't know, it gave me a different vibe. And when the second half started, you see the Mexican wave happening as well. So yeah, that was the true indication that we're not, as spectators, we're not completely, enticed by the match in terms of the level of play, but the people in the crowd weren't overly pleased either. And I read something earlier today that um, they haven't, sold out certain games, so they're selling tickets for like $4 each, which is absolute peanuts. If I was in America, I'd definitely, purchase a ticket and watch a game of football. But yeah, that just shows you that there wasn't any sort of excitement about this tournament. I think it's just come out of the blue, and yeah, for me, it's just one of those things that's been presented for money making. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do with having all the best teams in the world challenging each other. They just glorified it into a preseason tournament. That's what it feels like to me. So yeah, hopefully it gets better. From a viewing point of view. But yeah, I didn't really have too many high hopes. in regards to that. I'm not just saying it because Liverpool aren't in it. I'm actually quite pleased Liverpool aren't in it because I feel like this would have affected the squad going into the new season. I don't want our players to be absolutely knackered and burnt out before we even touch a ball in the Premier League. I'd rather the players go out on holiday, recuperate, rest, and then come back to the club in July and hit the ground running with the pre-season fixtures. That's what I want. I don't really want this to be something that's a part of Liverpool's fixtures, and it kind of ruins the pre-season stuff as well. So for me, it's very important that we focus on ourselves, and I'm glad we're not in the tournament because I feel like it would have been a waste of time. And what if we picked certain players picked up injuries? Um, it would have definitely affected our season going into August. So for me, yeah, I'm pleased we're not in the tournament. To be honest with you, Spitball says, big up Spitball. He said we should not impede any player's departure should they express a desire to leave the club. Player turnover is inevitable. Therefore, we should prioritize future investment and strategic planning. I think this move or this transfer has kind of come out of the blue. So it wouldn't have been strategic planning on their part because their assumption would have been, we just need to sign one more left back to come into the team, a young and up and coming left back that could be mentored by a Robertson. But with this rumor circulating now, that's kind of you know not ruined the plans, but it's kind of gone a bit left now. So we have to identify what is the next move. Do we sign another left back so we end up having two new left back signings at the club, or do we keep Simicast instead, which I think would be the sensible choice, and you have Kirkes and Simicast, or do you give someone like an Owen Beck a chance to challenge Kirkes in the team? Both options could be, I would say an obvious one in terms of what we do. Or you go out and get an experienced fullback that would have, taken Robertson's role in the team anyway. So as I mentioned earlier on, Robinson from Fulham would be a good addition. Or you go for a young and up and coming fullback from another league that wouldn't, that would be overjoyed about moving to a Premier League, but wouldn't, demand for a starting spot. So like El Haj Malik Diouf, who played for Senegal against England not so long ago. So that would be, another smart recruit there. But a lot of options there. So it's going to be interesting to see what Liverpool do going forward. Scribble says FSG, Julian Ward, Richard Hughes, and Michael Edwards got to be ambitious with wages, offload players, and spend smart 100%. I don't know how much Simicast earns, but I don't think it'll be too crazy. So, with Robertson leaving, that's a big, chunk of our salary or our wages, being reduced. So that definitely fits the bill in my opinion. Um, but it'll depend on Simicast as well. Maybe he's at this stage of his career where he's like, "Do you know what? I don't want to stay for another season because you've signed a young fullback in Kirkes and you're still looking at me as a backup." So maybe that wouldn't sit well with him. So he might want to move on elsewhere and go and play first team football for another club, whether it's in the Premier League or within Europe. Remains to be seen. So we do have to be a bit more smart in terms of who we kind of sign or who we try and promote. It's going to be interesting in terms of what the next move will be. Symbol says Owen Beck, sorry, could be used as backup for Milos Kerkez. I did earmark that as a potential option. You can't rule it out because he's had two great spells in recent years. So Dundee United was one where I believe he was in he was in the team of the season for the Scottish League, and then last year he had a fantastic season for Blackburn Rovers as well. So similar kind of path of Conor Bradley, where he had a great spell for championship team. So it aligns with Willow to come into a squad and challenge for a starting spot. And it's not going to be one where he's going to demand for a starting position. He knows he's got a fight at his hand. He's got a player in Kirkes who is very highly regarded, and I feel like he's going to be a fantastic fullback for us. So Owen Beck could be the option. It would be a smart decision, I think, because he ticks one of the homegrown boxes as well, so that's one thing there. Ability-wise, maybe he deserves an opportunity to fight for claiming the team. So preseason is going to be something where I don't think we'll sign a replacement right away if Robertson was sold in the next couple of weeks, if I'm being honest with you. I think what would happen is that they would assess the squad, give the likes of Owen Beck a chance in preseason and see, how he embeds himself in the squad. And if they feel like, he's a good fit or he is good enough to challenge Kirkis in the team, then I think he'll be given a chance. But it's a gamble to even do that, if I'm being honest. The safer option would be to keep Simicast, but I don't know where his head is at. Maybe he wants to leave and play first team football elsewhere because I believe he's around 27 as well. So he's at that age range where, if he's not getting a lot of games, then he might want to move elsewhere. He's 29, in fact, so he's a lot older. So we're not going to get a lot of money for him. I think there was interest from Leeds United that were willing to spend around 10, 15 million for him. So maybe we sell both, but then who do we sign? Robinson from Fulham would be a good one, but I think they'd ask for a good chunk of money to acquire his services, and we're going to spend about 40 million on Kirkis. So I wouldn't want us to spend too much on that replacement. Hatter would be a smart signing because he covers left back and centre back, but I don't think he's willing to leave the club this summer. With John Heitinger being the coach there, maybe he can, help his development, and then maybe he'll be ready made next summer onwards, and then that's the time we sign Hato. So a lot of questions. We'll get the clear picture. I think once Robertson makes that move, and then we'll see, who gets promoted or who uh, gets to challenge Kirkis for that starting role. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. And Spirit Ball says sell Robertson and Simicast. You can't rule it out. You really can't. I think as fans, we probably said that during the course of the season, but I didn't really think that was a realistic thing. But it looks like it could be the case because Robertson looks like he's getting interest from Atletico, and Simicast has been, getting interest from Leeds United. Is one team that I know. I'm not sure of any other team. It would interesting to see how much they spend on Simicast, but that looks like a player that's was on the verge of leaving beforehand. It's just that nothing's been a bit concrete. So yeah, it could happen. It just remains to be seen what we do as our next step. But it's going to be interesting. I think we'll get further developments in the next week or two, and then we'll see how the squad looks going into next season, or should I say going into preseason before we even go to that stage any further. So and that's the last comment, and that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Kieran and Spirit Ball for your comments. Appreciate your engagement as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, in terms of upcoming shows, no Liverpool content show tomorrow, but I will be doing live watch-alongs for the Club World Cup. I think tomorrow's fixture that I'll be doing is the Chelsea versus LAFC. I think kickoff is 8 p.m. UK time, so feel free to join in and get involved. If there's any breaking news that regarding Liverpool, I'll probably be doing impromptu shows. So the best thing to do, hit that notification bell so you know what time I go live. And yeah, that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.